And welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. Stephen Pryor has never been a teacher or an education bureaucrat, but the co-founder of the nationally recognized Amistad Academy in New Haven is Connecticut's new education commissioner. His charter school provides a convincing example that urban education reform efforts work when there is strong leadership. Pryor's ascension is expected to shake things up in this state with the highest academic achievement gap in America. And some say the teachers' union is still resistant to reforms. We'll talk about Pryor's achievements and what it means for Connecticut with some education reform activists here in the studio. Then we'll wrap things up with a look at Governor Dan Malloy's leadership style after 8 months on the job and what that means for Connecticut. Christine Stewart of CTNewsJunkie.com joins us. But first, we'll talk about Malloy's surprise pick for Education Commish, Stephen Pryor. Alex Johnson, Danielle Smith. We have Paul Holzer, Achieve First, Connecticut Black Alliance for Educational Options, ConCan. Got you guys all in.
Yeah, you got it.
So when this first started breaking, I'm sure all you guys been in this movement for so long, what was the scuttlebutt when you started hearing that you had a charter school person to be the commissioner of Connecticut?
Well, you know, I am from New Haven, and I knew Stephen sort of 10 years ago when I was working at the Housing Authority, and he was in the city at that time. And so I was excited because of what I know about his leadership style. You know, I think...
what can you tell us?
You know, he is someone who works incredibly hard. He's incredibly smart. He's very thoughtful, and he listens to all sides of an issue.
But this is a state that was resistant to charter schools, and here's a guy who was a champion for charter schools. A very interesting dynamic.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to, say where I think this is going to go in terms of charter school policy or not. I think the bigger issue here is that we're going from a status of where we've thought of commissioners in the past as maybe doing the same job but better to now saying we've got to rethink entirely how we're doing things at the state level, and that's particularly exciting to me.
As a parent advocate, Danielle Smith, you have a guy now who understands charter schools, who believes in them. You have a state here that's been fighting for resources. As a parent looking for change, what does this mean for you when you hear that this guy is the new commissioner?
I'm just excited to see, similar to Paul, something very different. It's an opportunity to have a very different conversation and to advance it. I think it was probably a couple months ago, I was sitting in the same seat and we were talking about leadership as one of the things that we needed to see in order to move things forward for kids. So the opportunity to have someone who understands that options are the key to dramatically transforming public education, that just makes me very hopeful.
But, Stan, I want to circle back to your frame here, because I actually think, look, those folks who know ConCan's work know, we're big supporters of high-performing charter schools. We want to see more. But I actually think the thing that's most exciting about the background here of the new commissioner is the work that he's done in Newark and especially in Manhattan, rebuilding after 9/11.
Housing in Newark,
you talk
right?
about an issue with people who have incredible passion and intensity. Rebuilding Lower Manhattan after 9/11. My sister-in-law was. Just so many people had so much at stake there, and the fact that he was able to succeed in that environment says to me that he can come into Connecticut, where there's no question that passions run high when we talk about what we need to do in our public schools, that he's going to be able to step in and, through his personality in no small measure, be an effective leader.
You're saying a guy can lead. Forget about charter schools.
Yes.
He can deal with very complicated issues and marshal the forces to one common cause, right? Let's talk about this. Two embarrassing issues for Connecticut. The widest academic achievement gap in America, right? And in the same state could not compete for the race to the top dollars for those same funds to reduce the gap. Extraordinarily embarrassing. How does this guy change that dynamic?
You're looking at me, Stan. All right, I'll take a shot at that. Look, I think that this governor campaigned on this issue. Quite frankly, he was outspoken on the campaign trail about his disappointment that we didn't succeed in Race to the Top. And the fact is now there is another round of Race to the Top funding. It's a competition for early childhood funding. There's $500 million at stake. Connecticut, has actually assembled a broad group of folks. Connecticut's fortunate to have have a great advocacy community in early childhood, and there's some already engagement between state government and that community. And so I think that the new commissioner has an opportunity to come in, and I think the thing we missed last time was we didn't focus enough on what the feds were really looking for in that competition, and we have the opportunity to get it right.
How about this as the outside set of eyes? If I said to you that Connecticut failed in its effort to get federal money because, one, it wasn't very well politically connected, and number two, the feeling was that in Connecticut they still weren't embracing full reforms, would you say that was I
actually think it wasn't a question of not being politically connected. I think that Race to the Top, actually, they did that straight up. It wasn't about political connections. It was about, could you read? No.
Delaware got money. Joe Biden said.
Come on. I'm telling you, I may be one of the few people who read through the Delaware application, and it kicked our butt on the merits.
Yeah. But how does a state with the widest achievement gap in America not be eligible for any federal funds to reduce the achievement gap? It's extraordinary to me.
Stan, go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to say that what's really interesting about the camp that Stefan's coming out of in Newark, New Jersey is there is a place where, you had a dynamic mayor who said, we're not going to think about just one pool of resourcing a very, very impressive effort to transform our schools. So they found philanthropic dollars to fill gaps that they didn't have. They found the resources wherever. And speaking to some of my colleagues from New Jersey and just saying to them, about the excitement of having our new commissioner, one of them said very frankly, one of the best things that Cory Booker had going for him was Stephen Pryor, was that he was very instrumental in sort of architecting that entire sort of camp and the way in which they were approaching it. So that gives us, I would say, like some hope to think about how it might look when we don't think about it in terms of just a single race. Those were things we should have been doing and trying to finance anyway. And so rather than crying over that opportunity that's missed, we need to really think about the other opportunities there are to get the resources to get the job done.
All right, this guy's background. Go ahead, Paul. You have something to say?
I just think that, what Race to the Top showed us was that the state, you didn't really need Race to the Top to show us this, but I think it highlighted this, that there was not the level of commitment really needed for real change in Connecticut. It just wasn't there. It wasn't political connections. I agree with you, Alex. It was a question of commitment. And I think this appointment, is the mayor's way of saying, I stated my commitment, and that commitment right now will manifest in the appointment of someone new, someone different. I mean, I'm in Hartford, right? We're Achieve Hartford, right? So we're looking at commitment at the local level, and we've seen it here. I mean, the level of reforms that are happening in Hartford, I mean, for those who know about it nationally, I mean, rival any other progressive school district in the country. So we're hoping now, finally, to say, we're going to see it somewhere locally. Now let's see it take place at the state level.
I think the other thing we have going for us is there are already legislators in place here in Connecticut who need that partnership. They need the executive branch to work in partnership with them, because that's how they can really succeed as leaders. So this is going to require, engaging with legislators. There's already support and leadership there, and putting it together is what we failed to do last time, but what we have every opportunity to do now.
We'll talk about the union in the next segment, because you talk about the lawmakers and the policymakers, but a big part of this is the unions, and we'll talk about how this gentleman's going to come and be able to work with that. When we return with the Stan Simpson Show, we're going to talk more about education reform and new commissioner Stephen Pryor, who is going to shake things up. He's an education reform champion, a charter school champion, who now is going to be the top guy for education in Connecticut. You're watching the Stan Simpson Show. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, too. Don't go away.